All right. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome. I'm going to do a share screen here. Hopefully, get the right thing. PowerPoint slideshow should be working. Um, so I'll thank everybody for joining the College Forum that's dedicated to our first formal conversation about the pandemic. Um, but before we start, I did want to offer one note of thanks to uh, our administrators and our staff and our confidential supervisory employees. And if we had faculty there, I appreciate that too. This week, we had our entire food share team isolating because of COVID exposure. And as we weighed our need to have that program go forward, we felt it was really important. And we ended up on Tuesday taking care of 1,300 families and probably about 1,000 yesterday. So it's a 4 day effort, and I appreciate everybody who came out and helped with that. And you can tell who those people were if you're on campus today, because we're all kind of limping around campus after spending 4 days hauling canned goods back and forth. So, but thanks to those people, that's really a huge way that we're changing the odds for our community. And not only that, but then on top of that, we did the vaccination for over 400 of our neighbors on campus. And again, that was our facilities team and our IT team and public safety, all making that work. So a busy week on campus. And as we start today's conversation, I'm hoping it's going to get us back to talking about what we normally talk about, which is students going to class. Um, so thanks for joining us. We have in the as Zoom panelists, we're not going to have every person give a presentation, but we have with us representatives from each of the constituency group. If you have questions as we're going along that you haven't already sent to your constituency person, you see them on the screen. You can shoot them an email or give them a text message or something like that to weigh in. We're not going to be able to answer all of our questions today. Um, we're we're uh, um, we're going to discuss kind of how the pandemic is affecting students, both our students and a little bit about nationally what's happening. I want to recognize the challenges that our faculty and staff have had in managing this now, coming up on a year, and then talk at the end about a framework for the fall 2021 class schedule. So we'll hop right into that. Last fall, we saw that our enrollment was down over 20% fall to fall. We heard from our students at that time that face to face was really important. Our student trustee and our student body president joined us in our meetings similar to this, although we were more in person at the time, to really talk about what our students need and what they want. And they really wanted face to face. And what they told us for fall and then again for spring was they wanted to be face to face. But barring that, they didn't want to be switching modalities in the middle of the semester. So we committed for fall and then again for spring to mostly remote prospects, and we saw that in our enrollments as they came in. Now in the spring, we're seeing similar issues where our credit enrollment is down by even a larger percentage, and overall we're at almost 18% off from students. So the good news from an institutional perspective is that the state's holding us harmless, right? The state has recognized that maybe the best thing to do during a budget downturn is not to cut the economic pipeline for your future workers. So the state has actually kept our budget whole, and we're grateful for that. So our conversation today is not about getting students back because we need them for our budget. Our conversation today is really about the important role we play in northern Santa Barbara County to educate our students and get them out into the workforce. in the March board meeting, we're going to be talking about an analysis we had done on the economic impact of the college. Our students, when they graduate, on average, are earning $9,200 more than they were as high school graduates. And we know that the return on investment for our students, if a student finishes their program in 2 years, it only takes them 15 months to recover the cost of their investment. So it's really important for a community such as ours to get educated folks back into the workforce. So we're hearing this from our students. We have survey data of our students that matches up with what we're seeing nationally. Students are saying that trying to attend college during the pandemic, community college students in particular, that it's just too much. And when you think about our students, we see the pressure they're under, oftentimes either with children of their own or taking care of siblings that are not in the K-12 schools either. We've got rural students, the students coming out of high school and going to college from rural communities is off substantially. We were part of a national trend that Latino students, more Latino students than ever were going to college. And this pandemic has really just damaged that all the progress that's being made has disappeared seemingly overnight. Our first generation low income applicants are down. We're seeing that right now with our promise applications. Our promise applications are running at about 20% of where they would have been this time last year. So those students coming directly from high school into college, we're losing those students. And what we know is that students who go directly from high school to college are more likely to complete their programs. And we know that's the whole premise of the Promise program, is get students immediately out of high school into college, going with at least 12 units so that they'll complete their programs. And we were seeing some really good trending direction on that. This is a fascinating report, and it shows that we were already struggling with students that were, high poverty, low income, minority status. All of those risk factors for students are being you can see, 7-8 times higher for students, the loss of those students across the country. This is a trend that we really have to work on turning around. We're seeing that basic needs is a growing issue. We're part of the Real College California colleges that are in part of the Hope Center, which is run out of Temple University. Sarah Goldrick-Rab is the director of that program. You might have read her book, Paying the Price. Really talks about the barriers to low-income students and even middle-income students who may have debt loads or lack of proper housing. So we know that the pandemic is hitting those students particularly hard, and we're being asked more and more to support those students. There is some help coming. A national strategy, which seems like a good idea. But the national strategy that the White House put out in January says that students from low-income families were twice as likely to cancel their plans to come to college. And we know that this is, it's a low information group, right? And we look at Santa Maria and Guadalupe in particular, where 40% of the adults over the age of 25 don't have a high school diploma. They don't have the information. These families don't have the information they need to help their students understand the importance of coming to college. So when you have that low information person in the community, and then you hamper our ability to meet with those families face to face, that we're so good at doing that with our counselors and our staff and our faculty who go out and recruit students, it really puts us in a bind to get those students onto campus, and has the potential for long-term damages to our community. The president has said that a priority is getting students back on campus, and that they are going to come up with a plan to do it safely. And you can see he's holding a copy of the plan that we were just showing on the previous slide. But we're getting some support now nationally and from the state on how we can reopen and do this in a safe manner. Our partners at Cal State and the UC system have both announced that they are planning for in-person learning in fall of 2021. They're having similar conversations that we are. We're about a month ahead of us in getting this done. So that's kind of our college student focus on that. I wanted to take a minute and really recognize the work that is being done by our staff across the board, and you know, you guys have figured out how to make your office out of your dining table, and some of our staff, a lot of our staff have still been on campus. Our student services staff have been safely rotating because some of our students really need that face-to-face hand-holding touch that you bring on a daily basis. Our IT staff, our public safety staff, our facilities staff are here and supporting not only the infrastructure we need to teach our classes, but are supporting the food share program and the vaccination sites. So it's been a lot of time for stress for our staff. Similarly for our managers, we've seen there's a lot of things to juggle. We're on top of their already busy day, we're calling them and asking them to come haul grocery bags out to the cars. Everybody is stepping up, and everybody's a little bit overwhelmed in doing this. And we recognize that our staff, from CSEA staff all the way up through our confidential supervisory and our administrative staff, have really been putting in a lot of extra time and thought into keeping the campus going. We know our students are really experiencing challenges with the mental health aspect of this. We know that they are struggling to come to class, or many of them have just stopped out. I mean, if we have enough anecdotal evidence that students are just saying, we're going to wait until you're back to face, and we have the students that are here are being successful. I think the faculty are going above and beyond to get those students moved through, but the students are really struggling with this, and especially on a campus like ours that has that residential campus feel, where you walk around campus at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and there's still a pretty good group of students who are on campus participating in clubs and having activities or study groups outside. And then, of course, our faculty. A recent study came out that really talked about faculty and their students for how this pandemic has impacted the classroom, and what we've seen there is that faculty are still concerned about student equity and success. This is certainly an equity issue during a time where we're moving forward on diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. There's no bigger equity issue on our campus than making sure that our most vulnerable students have access to learning that can help them complete their programs. We know our faculty are, in many cases, exhausted, especially at the end of the semester, and we heard a lot of that at the fall, that people were getting there, but they're still working to engage their students. I think this report is very reflective. This is a national report, but I think it reflects what I've been hearing on campus and what our cabinet team has relayed to me as well about how we're helping students on campus. So with that, we want to talk about how do we get students back on campus in the fall. And I want to preface this with the idea that we're going to make some assumptions that the vaccines are widely available, and the case counts that we have today are not the same in the future, that we've actually see, it's been nice the last couple of weeks. We've seen a downward trend, and hopefully that downward trend will continue. If we have another spike in the summer, if the vaccines prove that they don't last but for a couple of months, which I don't think is going to happen, then there's a whole different conversation. But between now and August 16th, when the fall semester begins again, how do we get students back on campus in a way that they can meaningfully pursue their goals? We have, from our constituency groups, we have some questions they've asked. From College Council and Academic Senate this week, there were some questions or thoughts related. So I'll share those with you first, and then we'll have a chance for folks on the panel if they want to ask some other questions or kind of broach topics. We'll get to that in a minute. So we'll start with this, and this really came from Liz West, who was talking about a geometry class. I believe she was talking about that is for our academy students primarily, and they're doing really well in the ERT process. And just because we're coming back to class in the fall doesn't mean we're going to abandon all the things we've learned over the last year. In the areas where we can show that different modalities help students and support student success, we want to support that. But what we want to start with is the basic premise that we're, our schedule in the fall is going to look more like fall of 2019 than fall of 2020. And if you'll think about what we did for fall of 2020, about this time last year, we said we're going to go remote in the fall, and we assumed that everything would be done remotely. And by exception, we pulled classes out that had to be face-to-face. Our nursing program, welding programs, automotive, our public safety academies, all of those things came out as into our regular mode of instruction. Sorry about that. I got distracted. But if we have models that work, then we should pursue that. And I can see us over the course of, the next year or so, having some innovative faculty who are going to say, hey, I can build a whole degree program that's ERT. We have 0 textbook degrees. We have associate degrees for transfer. We have all online degrees. I could see a faculty or a group of faculty coming together and saying, hey, here's how we could build probably a cohort model where students could take all of their classes ERT. But right now, we want to set the program what's best for the most students, and then we'll start working with your vice president to adjust after that. What's the last day we can revert back to ERT? If you'll remember last year, we switched in a week. We know a lot more now. I don't think we want to drop it on students that we would switch in a week, but I would think, if we start making our plans and working towards this in a deliberate manner, and then something goes sideways, in May, June, or July, we could make this shift back. If we assume it's going to be ERT and we don't, and then we try to shift back into regular classroom instruction, we're still going to lose a whole lot of students, and that's not the outcome we're looking for. There's a whole host of questions, and some of them are on the questions that were forwarded to me by a couple of the groups about what does it look like in the classroom. And to be honest, we don't know right now, right? This is really a 30,000 foot discussion. We don't know what every classroom is going to look like. We can probably we know that classrooms will be cleaned every day. They're already being cleaned, and we've got new procedures for offices and things where we can have a little bit of more disinfectant. But we're really relying on the new guidance that's going to come out that's based on science that will help us make sure that our students are safe, our faculty are safe, and our staff are safe coming back in. So I can't tell you today, and I don't think anybody can tell you today, does that mean that we're going to have classrooms that are divided into A and B, where half the students come on Monday and half the students come on Wednesday, or if the classes are going to be full, or if there's going to be Zoom opportunities. All of those are in play. And it's going to take a little bit of time working with your deans and your vice president, your department chair, to work out what that looks like on a regular basis. Um, so we've had a lot of questions about vaccines being available. I'm optimistic that by March, we're in Group 1B. I'm optimistic that by March we'll see faculty and staff having access to getting those vaccinations. That's barring any change by the state. The state seems to want to get involved now in how the vaccines are being distributed. And as with most things, when you live in northern Santa Barbara County, when the state gets involved, they don't really understand how the world works here. So we're hoping that there's some flexibility in there. But I still think there's going to be enough vaccine available that will be on the list in March to go forward. We're not going to be able to require vaccinations as our going forward, at least at this point. I don't know if there's legislation that would be similar to the required TB shots that we all have to have. But even for our students now, we're not screening for additional vaccinations, right? So we're what we have learned, and what I think will be hopefully an ongoing and lasting outcome of this, is like during flu season, we're going to see more people wearing a face covering during flu season, both people who might have minor symptoms or people that don't want to get minor symptoms. I think we're going to see similar to what you see in a lot of Asian countries. I think you're going to see that more and more in our community. But right now, we're not going to be able to do any kind of mandated vaccinations. How will exceptions to classes be handled? And kind of touched on this a moment ago, but really it's going to be talking to your department chairs, your deans, and the vice president to adjust the sections and get them in the right spot. For staff work, so some of our staff offices may continue to rotate as they are now. So we'll work with supervisors to make sure students are being served. And we're a complex organization, and the entire time we've been doing this, we've recognized the complexity of our organization. There's no one size fits all for us, because the things that work in a welding lab aren't the same thing you would get in a lecture hall for a history class, and the setups that you have in a STEM lab in biology or chemistry are probably different than what happens over the nursing program. So, we're going to have to go kind of section by section on campus and figure out how can we set up our campus in a way that helps students come back, students be able to get their education, and does it in an environment that's safe. And then finally, where are these discussions going to take place? We started it at College Council. We've had it at Academic Senate, department chairs. Our normal shared governance process is going to be where we have these conversations. I should be clear as well that, we understand that we have 3 bargaining units on campus, and some of these conversations are going to lap over into working conditions. So as they lap over into working conditions, we'll have those conversations as we always do. And we've committed to being open and transparent in that way. So those are the primary questions I had to answer. What we're really looking at doing, though, is I'm going to stop the share here. The real question is, how do we set up our campus in a way that makes the most sense for the most students? I had a really wonkish slide on there from a book that both I and Paul Murphy love, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that, but it really talks about choice architecture and how we set up our systems in a way so that the greatest benefit goes to the most students. Excuse me. And then we'll and then work back from that. Allow people to opt out. Allow people to make changes that make sense in that environment. So with that, I want to open it up and see if our panelists want to comment on anything they think I missed, or a question that we might have. So I'll look on my panelists here and see if there's.
Well, we've got a couple of questions from the Q&A feature, so I think maybe I'll tackle one of these first. What is plan or protocol to handle a COVID-19 case once classes resume on campus? For example, if a student gets COVID and comes to class, or a staff member or employee tests positive.
So we have protocols in place for that already, and I so I don't know specifically what happens, except for I get about 300 emails bouncing back and forth between the dean, Ruben Ramirez, Alex Young, and several others, and it sets in motion a whole series of things where contact tracing is done, classrooms are cleaned, office areas are cleaned and locked down. So we have we already have something in place for that. So if a student or somebody an employee were to show up positive, we have protocol in place to answer to deal with that.
I'm if I can maybe ask a follow-up on that. I wonder if it's maybe like what does the employee do? So whether it be a faculty member or even a classified staff member at the front desk. Last fall, classified had masks, and we could hand a mask to the student, right, if they didn't have one. But by that point, they're already hacking or sneezing on you. So I guess maybe I'm wondering, as a follow-up, what would be the maybe we can get a proper protocol as to, okay, I'm standing there, a student comes in, they're looking like they're sick, obviously possible COVID symptoms, because that mimics the flu or a cold or whatever, allergies. But then what do I do as an employee? How do I handle that?
So, and we can do some more training on that. And I think, we have, in working with CSEA, the signage you see around campus was largely designed with CSEA input. So, to make sure that it's clear, we started off with, don't come in if you have any symptoms, and we've got more symptoms going that way, or more symptoms on the signs now. We've limited access to certain entrances only. We set up the one way. So, if somebody comes in and looks like they're not supposed, they're not feeling well, certainly the staff member should ask them to go back outside and call in. That's return to your vehicle and make a phone call.
So just one more question on that. Will student workers have that responsibility, or is that responsibility going to lie with the faculty classified staff member?
I would, so like a student worker who's at the front desk, we would ask them to do the same thing. If they get pushback, then they're not to engage past the request. They should call in a supervisor to come and assist with that. But we haven't, I haven't seen or heard of any of that on campus. So.
President Walters.
So I want to try to keep this to the panelists. I probably should have just disabled the chat and because there's too many people on here for us to answer all the questions flying in from all different kinds of places. I did see one that asked about on-person transmission. So we've been fortunate. But we've also been diligent. We've only had one case of on-campus transmission in almost a year. And we have had, obviously, people we have had people come down with COVID who are on campus, but until last week, it had only been it had all been done offsite in the community or at home. So we've been good about that. So other thoughts from the panelists. Lynette, we had a pre-meeting and you were in class and couldn't join us. If you want to kind of weigh in on what you're hearing from your student colleagues.
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Lynette Espinoza. I work at Allen Hancock as a student ambassador, and I'm also the ASBG president. I just wrote just a couple notes in case I was told to maybe say something. But from my peers and students and my fellow coworkers and those who are on the board with me on ASBG, it's more so heavily on the social aspect. I feel like a lot of the students are almost to the edge. They're a little desperate to come back. And yes, safety does need to be a priority, but it's come to the point where I feel like the outside factors they weigh really heavily upon a lot of the students. And school for them is an outlet for them to be able to have that control of their life, to go to school and to attend it. And we can play in those safety factors as well to keep safe from COVID. And I know we can come up with really great ideas, but definitely I think that students just want to grasp or control that small bit of their life back, as well as students might not be vocal about it because there are seniors who are coming in and they want to experience the college life that they kind of can't have right now due to COVID. And as well as instructors who do pre-record a lot of their videos, and that does take away from the warmth of what the Zoom meetings could possibly have for those students. There are a lot of factors that play into it, but definitely the social aspect for a lot of students when it comes to ERT classes. And hybrid would definitely be a plus. And I do definitely recommend that, if we can, to switch to hybrid. I definitely would take hybrid classes personally, being safe, of course, but to me, I think it's so important to just continue having that school spirit and just the social aspect of having that connection with your instructors and the connection you have with students who you meet. It's just so important. And I feel like a lot of students, it's really hard for a lot of students right now who can't grasp that themselves.
Okay, thanks, Lynn. Let me answer a couple of the questions on the list that I was given. And we're one of the CSEA questions was, how long of a duration will the district allow for classified to transition back to campus? And I think for the most part, I would think most of our classified staff are already on campus in some manner. Certainly our IT staff, our public safety staff, and our facility staff have been here. And many of our student services staff have been rotating. So, what it exactly looks like today, I can't tell you, but all of those conversations will happen in within your service units. We've got one question asked about enrollment being down statewide, and it said that there are very few California community colleges open for in-person services, and why are we doing that when the other 95% aren't? And I could tell you that that's most of the colleges are open for in-person services at some level, similar to what we're doing. They're seeing the students. When we look at our students and their ability to access our campus, we should remember, we talk a lot about first generation college students, and community colleges are the primary server of first generation community college students. But 40% of the adults in Santa Maria and Guadalupe don't have a high school diploma. Our students overwhelmingly are first generation high school students. and they don't know how to navigate a college, and trying to do it online and doing it over the phone just really doesn't work. And I can, my own personal example, Trey's a junior at in high school this year, and he took a music appreciation class in the summer, and he wanted to write a report about Johnny Cash, and I was kind of confused because he was talking about Baroque music and classical music, and that was the kind of conversation they were having. And I said, "How did you guys get to modern music so fast in a summer class?" He's like, "Oh, we haven't." I'm like, "Well, then why are you writing a report about Johnny Cash? I'm guessing you're supposed to write a report about somebody who is doing classical music." And I said, "Maybe you should go talk to the professor and ask, what's the appropriate topic." And he did, and sure enough, that was not, he was not to be writing about Johnny Cash. He was supposed to be writing about. He ended up writing about somebody modern, a modern classical arranger. And so imagine our parents that are spending 8 to 10 hours a day working in the fields. They don't know to ask that question. They don't know the very basic things, the things that seem so simple to us that would be on the syllabus. They don't know to even ask that question of their students. And so having that face-to-face interaction with our students, we know we have to be a high-touch organization for our students to be successful. And for, this is, when I came here 8 years ago, I brought with me the study about students being connected, directed, engaged, focused, nurtured, and valued. And I'm so honored that the campus has picked that up. It's still, I still see it on signs all around campus. That was our strategic plan for 7 years. It's a high touch model. And for our community, we really need to be able to talk to those students. And when I talk to my colleagues around the state, I meet with our regional colleges on a monthly basis, and statewide every other month. And that's the conversation everybody's having. Another
Evan?
question was about the public health vaccination site in the tents, and this is a good one that I hadn't thought about sharing, but it's what do we do about parking? If we're going to have students back in the fall, then that's obviously going to make it very difficult to do the vaccination clinics. We've had that conversation with the county. Hopefully by the time we get to August, the number of vaccinations being administered will be down to a trickle because we've gotten everybody vaccinated. But if nothing else through this pandemic, I can tell you the one thing that we're really good at, and that's traffic management. We can get a large number of people on campus and off campus in a hurry. Our public safety program's really good at that. And then another question that was, how are we going to communicate to students for fall registration? We're already reaching out to students, telling them when the dates are. And we'll use the traditional methods. We'll do, the rave alerts and email, and we'll use social media. Our ASB will be involved in that. And I don't know if we've really talked to you about that, but there's a factor there. We've had student workers calling students, and we're working with the high schools to do outreach. Our Promise program right now is running at about 20% of the applicants that we had this time last year. So we met for about an hour and a half week before last with the Santa Maria Joint High School District to see what we could do better and ask for their help in making sure that we were getting students enrolled for the Promise program.
Kevin?
Yes, sir.
Kevin? This is Mike Dempsey speaking.
Yeah.
I think I can come in and help answer a question, and
Okay.
also let our constituents know that the FA began conversations with the district about returning to campus and the protocols at the end of October, and we're currently in negotiation in that process. My answer goes to Lupita, who asked if there is a portion of a student who cannot attend in-person classes due to COVID, what would be the protocol to preventing them from failing classes? That is one of the things that's currently being asked at the negotiation table. So that's part of the discussion right now. We don't have an answer, but I wanted to let you know that is something that we've brought up.
Okay. Good. And then there's a whole series of questions that I have here that really talk about what does the classroom cleaning look like? Can we get air purifiers for classrooms, things like that? That'll all be part of the conversations through facilities council. Through we've got money from the new HERF 2 funding. That'll go to resource allocation. It'll be in facilities council. It'll be at college council. So those conversations will all take place. And those aren't decisions that we need to make, right this second. But certainly we want to have classrooms be as clean and safe as possible, and we have some good tools for that. Let me look here.
Kevin, can I ask a question
Sure.
regarding what you just brought up? This is Mark Miller from the Part-Time Faculty Association, by the way, but one of my constituents asked if hand sanitizers will be available in the classrooms.
Yeah, absolutely. We had a conversation. I can't remember who was involved in it, but we got 7,000 bottles of hand sanitizer, and we had spent about 10 minutes discussing how to distribute it when we suddenly realized we've only got about 500 employees. Just give everybody 2, and we'll still have 6,000 bottles left. So and these are big bottles. So we've got plenty of hand sanitizer. The facilities crew have been great about getting those all over campus. We'll have plenty of that kind of stuff. My guess would be, what does the fall look like? If I were to say today, it would look pretty similar to what it looked like in fall 2019, only with students wearing masks in their classrooms, and perhaps faculty as well. I'm optimistic that the vaccinations are going to work. I'm on the hospital board. I've gotten some good insight from we have an epidemiologist who works here in our community, who you've probably seen him on the news. He's a really tall, skinny guy named Trace Ritter. And even prior to the pandemic, having served on the hospital board, I knew him to be a nationally recognized infectious disease expert. He's somebody that has really been working on this for a long time. And so he's, the efficacy of the vaccines, the kind of research he's showing us is good. And I'm optimistic that what we're hearing on the back end of production, regardless of whatever hiccups are going on right now, that production is going to ramp up pretty quickly, and we'll be able to get our folks vaccinated this spring.
Well, that brings up another question I've gotten is, will masks be mandatory?
I don't know that we can answer that today, but like I would say, if I was guessing, yeah. And and especially if the CDC and the state are telling us masks are mandatory, I've literally lost friends this year over masks because they work. Masks work, and if we're able to make those mandatory, we will certainly make it where nobody has to teach or serve a student that won't wear a mask.
Thank you.
Other folks on the panel that some questions, maybe I kind of grouped a bunch of them together there, and I think there was some overlapping stuff.
Yeah, I've got a few questions. This is Trevor Passage, Academic Senate President, and I was compiling some questions and comments from our faculty. I do want to remind everybody that these aren't necessarily my questions or comments, but questions and comments that I am presenting from those faculty that are being represented. So first one is, why haven't faculty and staff been surveyed like students regarding ERT?
I don't know. We could certainly do that if folks want to answer a survey. We can. It seems like we did have a staff one, but we can certainly have some conversations about doing that. Maybe that could be a college council project, working with institutional effectiveness. But I mean, I think overall though, we're here to serve students, right? And so we want to set up the way that we provide educational opportunities in a way that serves students. And so that would be my only reason why we haven't done that, but nobody asked until today.
And a follow-up similar to Mark's questions about a mask mandate, I have someone here asking about enforcement of if there were a mask mandate. Do we know how that might look?
I would think, I just got a note that said we've actually done 2 faculty and staff surveys. So if we'll get those, if you look up the institutional effectiveness website, you'll see those. Well, I'll tell you this. So early on in the pandemic, the last time I left the bubble of Solvang to San Luis Obispo, I was driving back from my in-laws in Utah, and we stopped at a package store in Nevada, and they had big signs out that said, wear your mask. If you don't wear your mask, our staff aren't going to help you. It was very clear, and we would have the same kind of thing. If there's a mask mandate and folks are going to come in and not wear their mask, then we'll tell the staff, just walk away. Call a supervisor. We haven't seen any of that. The kind of militant anti-masking stuff only seems to really work in groups. So hopefully people would be respectful of others and continue. So, but we certainly would make sure if it's a mandatory, if we're able to mandate that, then it'll be mandatory.
Okay, and similar bent, is there any plan to have on-campus testing? Do we have a plan for testing our students, staff, and faculty?
We are testing a certain number of students. And actually, maybe part of that HERF conversation we have, and Eric, I know Eric's in the attendees, we should write down, maybe we should have, we could use some of that HERF money to buy testing kits. The home testing kits are coming available now. And, we should, give that some thought as we get into the fall. I did see in the Q&A somebody asking about the live events that students enjoy, the Hancock Hello and Club Days and things like that. And we're certainly optimistic that we can get back to that. That's part of the goal, right? Is to get, what Lynette talked about with the social aspect is that's what's, our as a community college and as a community college alum myself, I went to my community college, I took my classes, and I went home or I went to work. We have a large group of students that are very active in campus life, and that's speaks well for what we're doing as a college to engage those students. And so I would hope that we would get back to that. We know for a fact, and we can see in our data and in our anecdotes that our inability to meet with students and especially parents face-to-face to get students registered is really hampering our ability to reach out to students.
Dr. Walters,
Yes.
can I add a little to what possibly could happen if, there was any safety issues? Well, at my job, like about having it be mandatory for people to wear masks. I work as a Starbucks barista. And so before we even come in, we're already wearing our masks. And when we come in, we actually take our temperature first thing. And after we take our temperature, we sign in that we've taken our temperature and that we're okay and that we're wearing our masks. I don't know if we can actually probably incorporate that into classes or even events now that was brought up, but that's just something that we do every day. We cannot go into our job without taking our temperature and without making sure that we're okay. Like they ask us a lot of questions too, like how are your symptoms? Like, are you feeling okay to come to work today? And it really helps. And I think it's super important.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And we're doing that in a lot of places. We're doing that at the food share. We're doing that at the vaccination clinic. We're doing that at the public safety training center. When you walk in, you've got to go, they take your temperature and they ask you a series of questions. Do you have a cough? Have you been around somebody with COVID? There's a whole series of questions that you have to be able to answer in order to gain entry to the facility. And so I think you'll see more of that. And depending on the severity, I mean, if we're down to, dozens of cases per week across the state, then that'll look a lot different than if it was a little higher. And if it's as high, if we were talking about numbers that were as high as they were following Thanksgiving and Christmas holidays, we're not going to be back on campus in that environment where where there's 4,000 people a day dying nationally. We're not going to be on campus in that situation. So it's going to be a balancing act when we get there. I could see us setting up, one-way entrances to buildings like Building M, where you can only go in from one direction, and then maybe even setting up, stanchions around the M200 and 300 buildings where you kind of have to pass by a desk and make that same attestation as you go through. But I think trying to decide that in February is pretty difficult. The closer we get to August, the better of a handle we'll have on that.
Dr. Walters, just a question. This is Mary Patrick, right, representing Management Association. When we talk about numbers and guidance that we're looking at, do we have a particular document that we're using, right? Just like businesses have the tier system. As we're planning, can we look to a document that says this is the guidance that's being used? And so if we have multiple plans going, at least we all have the same overall guidelines.
So we have a pandemic plan, and it's a living document, and we're actually working on updating it on a regular basis. We're anticipating that Cal OSHA and federal OSHA is going to give us some updated guidelines as well. We've been kind of tying our tiers to the county. I mean, the county color coding system is confusing enough, so we didn't feel like we needed to add to that confusion. Yeah, you'll see that, and Ruben's going to send me the link to the pandemic plan, and I can show that. A lot of work went into that. There's some really good, and it's again, it goes back to the complexity of the organization, right? It's the way we're doing things in my office is substantially different than the way PCPA and athletics are doing things, different than the way Toby McLaughlin's doing things in Lompoc at the chemistry labs. Everywhere you go on campus, there's a different set of protocols to make our learning experiences safe. So,
Kevin, can I jump in? This is Gordon from Supervisor Confidential. I think you covered everything on our list as far as the confidentials go. One of the things that the team wanted to just confirm is that, or to emphasize, is the frontline custodial staff as the cleaners, that we boost the resources available to them, perhaps either temporary or more staffing in order to to clean the classrooms and do all this they do.
Yeah, and I think we can, if we're it doesn't seem likely to me that we're going to be able to clean classrooms after every single class with a 10-minute passing period. And if things were in such a state that was required, we probably it wouldn't be wise to have students back on campus anyway. But making sure that the Jim Harvey and his team have done a good job of getting the I don't know if you guys remember from back in the day, it was called Terminator is the name of the spray, and they got special Ghostbuster backpacks, and they spray down the entire place. I can tell you our facilities team is part of the vaccination pod. We have actually been able to get them in line for vaccines. So for them and our public safety folks, so since they're working in those high risk areas with the vaccination clinic, then we have some protection for them there. And oh, it looks like somebody put the pandemic response plan. So I've got it up on the chat here. So we're in the shared screen. You can see, as much as you'd like, and there's, it's 81 pages long. So one thing I haven't seen in the chat necessarily, or the Q&A, but something that's similar is, what are we going to do for spring events? And we haven't made a final decision, but my guess is going to be that, spring graduation is going to be very similar to the drive-through graduation we had last year, which the students loved. It was a little bigger burden on our staff who were out from 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning until 6 o'clock at night. But it was such a great event that we're not going to delay it this year. That's the one thing we can promise is graduation this year will not be delayed for our students, and we'll be sure that they get that in there.
Question, or Kevin, I'm sorry, I have a question. This is Veronica with CSEA. I did get an email in, and it asks, can any of the funding you spoke of for classrooms be used to upgrade the filters for the HVAC systems in offices where staff work? Regardless of meeting CDC compliance, it would make it much safer to upgrade to filters that capture airborne viruses.
Yeah, I think that's part of that HERF2 conversation to, how do we, I don't know enough about our mechanical systems to know how that works, whether it needs to be standalone units in workspaces or if it needs to be, but certainly that would be an appropriate use of those funds and part of that conversation that we'll have in our shared governance process.
This is Trevor Passage. I've got another question that I would be remiss to leave off. This comes from a faculty member, and I'm pretty sure they're from non-credit. With off-campus sites being limited due to COVID restrictions, what consideration will be given for non-credit class space? As it is now, we don't have access to rooms beyond Building S until after credit classes are scheduled.
So I think that's an important question that will be answered as we go through the spring. I mean, that's, we can't, I shouldn't even try to answer that because I'll just get in trouble. But certainly those are the questions we need to be talking to our deans, our department chairs about. And, but if we start with that idea that we want to assume that things are going to be a normal fall as if COVID never happened, and then work our ways back. And for non-credit, we know there's going to be some exceptions out there. Nursing homes may not want us back in there. We do teach some classes there, but by and large, the types of programs we teach we'll figure out a way to get those taught. Oh, sorry. I thought I just accidentally ended the meeting. All right. Other thoughts from the panelists? I mean, I appreciate folks being here. It's, there's a lot to take in and there's a lot to think about. And I think we're all kind of in the same mindset. What I can assure you is we're going to follow best practices in science. And I'm going to advocate, and I think all of us are going to advocate for doing what's best for our students. And so if we start planning the fall is going to be normal and we have to walk it back a little bit, that'll be disappointing. But I think that's the better path forward than not giving students a better sense of where we're headed. I don't remember if I said this at the beginning, so I'll bring it back in the end. Just to talk about the challenges our students are facing and to thank folks for all of the work that they've put in, I've been reading these articles the last couple days about broadband access. Excuse me. And these conversations about broadband access completely miss the reality that our students are living in. Yesterday at Food Share, there's a young kid that Ruben and Noemi and I have come to know a little bit. He lives in the apartments behind us. He's in 6th grade, and he comes over and picks up food, oftentimes with his 5 or 6-year-old sister. And so when you pick up food at the Food Share, you ask how many people live in your household. And so he had come up and I was talking to him a little bit, and I was asking him, I was like, so how many people live in your house? And he said 9. 9 people in the apartments just north of campus. Now, maybe there's some 3 bedrooms in there, but I've seen 2 bedrooms. And we've been over there several times during the pandemic to pass out some bulldog bound stuff to the kids that are there. Like we gave them pencils and stuff. And we went over there and did sort of a reverse trick or treating and took candy over there. And when you walk through that complex, you can see in the windows of elementary age kids sitting on their bed trying to do their schoolwork. But when there's 9 people living in a 2-bedroom apartment, it's really hard to do schoolwork. And it's really hard to convince those students that they can leave those areas and come to the places we've set up to make studying safe. We've given students laptops, we've given them hotspots, we've given them the tools. But if their living situation is such that they don't have room to study, or they don't have childcare for their children, or they're taking care of siblings who are K-12, they're not going to be able to participate in a remote learning environment. And if that's all to say, so if the K-12s aren't back in the fall, all of our conversations this spring are for naught, because I don't see how we get those 15% of students back if the K-12s aren't back to provide a safe space for those younger children that are off with their siblings. So I just want to say thanks to everyone. This is when I talk to my colleagues across the state, all of us have great stories, and I certainly feel like ours are the best. We're closing in on having provided a duplicated headcount number, but 300,000 people with food. We will have vaccinated probably 30 or 40,000 people on our campus by the time it's done. We've done this at a time where we're still teaching students, we're still getting students through their programs. Faculty, I appreciate all the work you're doing to make this work. There's some really innovative stuff going on across campus for our staff that are keeping things moving. Whether you're doing it at home or on site, it's tremendous. And our admin team has really stepped up and has been a great, great heroes for our students. And our confidential supervisory staff the same. I kind of consider them in our regular staff, but it's truly transformational what you guys are doing for our community. And in the limited amount of community interaction I'm allowed to have, which is usually a Zoom meeting with the Chamber of Commerce or the city or a Rotary Club, just constant praise for the good work you're doing. And I'm grateful for that. And let's start looking to College Council and our other councils to start planning for what fall should look like. And we'll I think we're gonna come out the other side of this. When people look back at this time in Santa Maria and Lompoc, San Ynez Valley, and ask, what were the good things that came out of the pandemic, they're gonna say the fact that Allen Hancock College was there and kept serving students in the community was a big part of the reason that we were able to get through this. So with that, we'll say thank you. We'll post the Mike.
Yeah, I just
A good
wanted.
speech. Now don't mess it up.
I'm sorry, but I just wanted to say that this is an ongoing conversation. So our constituent groups should continue to share their questions and concerns with us.
Right.
We're not done here. Thank you.
I'm
correct. Sorry, Kevin.
No, that's good. That's actually good in my summary to add that. Keep asking the questions, and we'll post this on the president's page. There's the whole communication. All the communication documents are there. we'll post both the PowerPoint and whenever this video turns into a recording, that we can post that so people can come back and take a look at that as well. So, so thank you for being here today, and I hope you have a great weekend. And you know, wear your mask and wash your hands all weekend. So we'll see you next time.